Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the meeting. We're going to get started here. Want to welcome everybody, and right now we've got more people coming in on board right now. We've got 34 in the meeting right now, so that's really pretty good. If you can hear me all right, give me a big thumbs up, everybody. Everybody's good. All right. So I want to welcome everyone to the meeting here. I'm gonna get let's see here. I'm trying to get my meeting notes here. We have got folks from literally all around the world here today. I want to welcome Gordy Robinson from Scotland. Gordy, can you wave to everybody? They can see you. I don't know if they can see you in their side. Also, we've got Gerald Mabry. He's in Kuwait City. We've got folks from all across the state and across the country. So we're really glad that everybody's here. We want to make sure that everybody's safe and healthy. That's the main thing that we're trying to promote here by doing the meeting online like we are. We'll probably continue in this format at least until July, I'm thinking, guys. As far as having a big meeting like we're doing right now. Our friends over in D3 are doing the same thing. They're having their meeting on Zoom as well. So I want to make sure that we acknowledge that. I know Donna Orr and several other folks from D3 are on the call as well. By the way, I want to say hi to Duane down in San Antonio. He's a division director down there. Don's waving to everybody right now. We also want to acknowledge that the Texas Western, David, there you are, David. David, wave to everybody. Yep, there you are. David is the new president of the Texas Western. I say new, he's relatively new. He's getting his feet under him by hook or crook anyway right now. But they're opening their club back up today. So starting at 2 o'clock this afternoon, they're going to be having the doors will be back open to the Model Railroad Club. And everyone will be required to wear a mask. But if you want to get some model railroading in, you can get over there to that club and do that where we normally meet. Our flat car clinic is the clinic that never will be given, I guess. We started trying to do this clinic in February, and for one reason or another, we've just got pushed off and pushed off and pushed off. So we as soon as we get back in, we do have parts, we do have everything. Joe Lysing and came over to my house here a few I guess it was about a week and a half ago, wasn't it, Joe? We came over and separated all of the individual pieces for the packages for the kit build. So everybody's got their name on it. It's all labeled whenever we, I'm not the kit build. I'm sorry, it's not a kit because we're supplying, all you're doing is buying the parts. We're just putting it into a package for you. So this will qualify as a scratch build whenever you're doing it. But the packages are all put together with everybody's name on it. Duane's over there going nuts on the other end of this call right now because I said the K word. So we don't, everybody make sure that we're not doing that. Gerald, we're going to try to get yours out in the mail to you here in the next week or so that it'll all be good whenever you're ready to start doing your build over in Kuwait with us. The NMRA-X, I wanted to talk a little bit about that. If you're not familiar with that, the NMRA-X, this is their new logo that you're looking at right there. The NMRA-X is, let's see, is everybody seeing the logo? With that's their new logo. The guys over in Gordy over in Scotland came up with this, and if you're not familiar with what happened about 2.5 weeks ago, I guess it's 2 weeks ago today, Gordy, is that about right? 2 weeks ago today, there was a 24-hour model railroading broadcast marathon. It not only was it momentous, it was groundbreaking for being able to put that much content out to model railroaders worldwide. It was a worldwide broadcast. It was done on Facebook the first go around. And the reason it was done that way was because there are over 20,000 people that are members of the model railroad, the NMRA Facebook page. And this was a put together with zero budget dollars. But Gordy put this whole thing together with some folks in Australia, and Speed helped as well. They were moderators for a 24-hour, 24-clinic session on Facebook. It was such a resounding success that over 2,000 different people logged in, and all of the clinics had an average of about 220 people per clinic for the 24 hours. So this was groundbreaking and probably changed the face of model railroading and the content and the way it was distributed forever. I mean, it was that good. I was fortunate enough to be a clinician for this, put on a clinic. There were several people from the United States, but literally all around the world putting on clinics. There's going to be another one next Saturday on May 16th, pardon me. And it's going to be a 12-hour session, not a 24-hour session. Gordy, I want to ask you here for a second. I've got you unmuted, Gordy. Gordy, is the next one, it's going to start at what time? I'm sorry. Hang on a second, Gordy. I thought I had you unmuted.
There you go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you go. All right.
Yeah, okay, so the next one's gonna start at 6 a.m. Eastern, so I guess that's 5 a.m. Central Time for you guys in Texas, and it's gonna run for 12 hours, and it'll finish just before dinner time for you guys. So,
is this one gonna be on multiple platforms?
No, so it's gonna be only on Facebook, but the Facebook, it'll go out on the NMRA Facebook page, which is facebook.com/NMRA.org, and that's open to the public, so you don't need a Facebook account or to give any details to Facebook to watch that. And then afterwards, it takes us about 7 to 10 days, but we'll edit all of the videos into 1-hour segments, and they'll all go up on YouTube. So if you didn't catch the last one, if you go to the NMRA's YouTube page, YouTube channel even, which is NMRA.org, there's no dot in it, you can see all the videos. There's 24 videos there from 2 weeks
ago. Gordy, those are going to remain online for anybody's consumption moving forward. Is that correct?
Yes, there's no intention to take them down. Certainly, they're not as good as a video that's done where your recording device, your camera's connected to the computer, because the logistics of this were that we had people dialing into our studio from all over the world, and then we were recording it. So some of it's not in very high definition, but yeah, they'll be up there, and they'll all be there. And at some point in July, we may well, when there was supposed to be something in St. Louis, keep your eyes peeled, because we may well repeat some of the clinics that were from previous sessions.
Tell us about the logo and merchandise for NMRAX.
So the logo was put together by a chap in Canada, in Toronto, who's actually got a little model railroading business. He produces HO scale animals, so very small animals, and like Canadian geese and critters and raccoons and all kinds of crazy things, all 3D printed. He produced the logo for me. I just reached out to people and said, could some people knock together a logo, and so it's kind of the X is a railroad crossing book, a modern one. This is a little bit modern. I thought that was
pretty clever. You know, it's simple and to the point. You know.
Yeah, he said, "What do you want?" I said, "Just put a crossing book on the back of it and see what it looks like." So yeah, it came out really well. That's the logo, and then we'll put different strap lines underneath it. So you might see that same logo, but you might see Ask the Master Model Railroad or Virtual Model Railroad Convention or any other NMRAX event that we put on, or the strap line will be underneath it. We're in negotiations at the moment to produce some merchandise. I think people want to support the initiative. As you said, this has cost no NMRA dollar whatsoever. That's our plan going forward, but we would really like to help fund some coverage at different NMRA events and stuff. So to do that, we'll be producing a little bit of merchandise, some stickers, and some stickers, some different T-shirts, and different bits and pieces like that. Hopefully, we're just negotiating on that right now.
Perfect. Anything else you want to add, Gordy?
Yeah, if anybody wants to take part and give a clinic, possibly to the biggest audience you'll ever give a clinic to, then please get in touch with us. If you just message the NMRA on Facebook, that'll get to me because I'm one of the moderators, so I'll see it. Or get in touch with Speed. I know you guys know Speed very well. We'd love to have more representation. I don't want to just use the same people all the time. I think this will grow, and it'll be a good pool of people around the world to come and give clinics to your divisional meetings, your regional meetings, and also to broadcast through Facebook. So please get in touch if you want to give us a clinic.
Can you give anybody your contact information, Gordy?
Yeah, I mean, you can email me. My email address is gordonrobinson@hotmail.com. Well, actually, it's gordonrobinson80@hotmail.com. But the best way to get hold of me is to get hold of Speed because he's at least in the same time zone. And then Speed can always get hold of me. So.
And if they need to, they can get in touch with me, and I can put them in touch with you as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a time zone and issues and all kinds of things at the minute. So, as I'm sure you appreciate, I'm juggling a lot of balls in the air with this as well. So, better to get hold of your local people and get them to get hold of me than I've not got to answer hundreds of messages, but that's fine.
All right. Thanks, Gordy. We appreciate it. Everybody knows that we have an RPM event, the Railway Prototype Modeler event coming up. That's supposed to be at the end of June. There's discussion as to whether or not we're going to continue with that. Right now, we're just kind of letting it float out there to see exactly what the state of everything is until the 11th hour. And then if we have to cancel, we will do that. But right now, it's still a go. And I'm thinking that it's probably going to be one of the first events where people can come back out and start seeing everything. I just got a text message here said that the St. Louis, Jason's telling me that the St. Louis RPM at the end of July has already been canceled. So if you cancel, you can never put it back on the schedule, at least for that same time frame. That's kind of the thought process here. So we're going to continue to have it on the books, and then if we can go through with it, we will. If we can't, we'll cancel and push it off to another time. By the way, the Texas Western, David has asked me to confirm that it's only open for club members today, and until further notice, it's just club members coming over there, and everybody will be wearing a mask. So that's a good procedure to follow. I know that there are still right now train shows that are still on the books for the end of the year. I know that this Division 1 is responsible for the Plano show and putting the NMRA booth up. So right now we still need to make plans on that moving forward as if it's still active, because it is. So I'm looking for somebody, if you'll reach out to me later as an organizer, to help put together the NMRA booth for the Plano show that we'll be constructing and manning and doing our test track for. We'll also do some in booth clinics, but we also need some people to do clinics in the main room for clinics. We are responsible for putting on 2 clinics in that clinic area, the clinic room. Now we can do 1 2-hour clinic if somebody wants to go that route. So that's what we did once before with a big scenery clinic, and it went over very, very well. It was a hands-on clinic, and people even we did that for the Plano show, and then came back and did it again at the LSR convention, and everybody loved that hands-on, make it and take it kind of scenery clinic. So it was something that we really happy with. I want to give you an update on the 2023 convention. Right now things are just progressing along. We're doing a lot of the planning work and everything. Joe Lysing has been working his backside off, and I just want to give a big shout out to Joe on that. Joe's the treasurer for the convention, and man alive, has he put together some amazing stuff. He's got binders. If you look behind me, you see these binders back over here. He's got like 3 of them right now that he's set up for the convention alone, putting together proposals and budgets and just working through all the numbers and everything. So he's really taken this and he's done more work on it, I think, than Cranda and I right now than as far as getting the convention put together. So I want to thank Joe for that. He's doing a great job. I want to call on Dick Brannon. Wait a minute, it's Rhonda Brannon, and let you there and give us a treasurer's report if you would, Rhonda.
Okay, I'm using my wife. I think my wife used my computer last, and it's on. She logged in or something like that. I don't know. But anyways, Dick Brannon will give the report. So right now, as of today, we've got $4,132 in the bank in our checking account, and we have expenses associated with the convention that will be reimbursed by National eventually to the tune of $1,650. So basically, we got about $5,700, $5,800 in the bank. So
real dollars and receivables is what you're talking about there, right?
Exactly.
And so the real dollar amount is
4140.
Okay. So at this time, I want to mention something. Let's see here. I'm going to get over here to David Cranda. David, there you are. I'm going to unmute you, David. Well, I'm trying to unmute you, David. It's not letting me unmute you. There you go. All right, you're unmuted now. David is head of our video team, and we're looking at possibly buying a video switcher so that we can start doing broadcasting of all of our meetings online, live or whatever, moving forward. Even when we come back into a face-to-face environment, we're still going to do video production. Right now, we've got 4 cameras. We've got a soundboard. We've got all of the lighting we need. We've got our microphones that we are already in possession of. So we could put together a full-blown video production of all of our meetings and all of our clinics. And so one of the things that the NMRA-X program has asked us as a division to be a case study, to be able to put that content out to people and see how it can be done. So I'd like to take a poll here. David, can you give us a little more information about the switcher that you've proposing?
Okay. It's a small switcher that it's built for to do streaming production. So it's just a little keyboard and software that all our cameras are HDMI in computer. You can plug computers in for the slideshows, and it has its own kind of audio mini mixer, so it'll help with it. And then it just basically it does the Ethernet into the computer, and the computer is running FireWire, and you can live stream to Facebook or YouTube or anything else, but it's a full camera setup with multi-cameras. I would have control and would be switching live between them as the scene goes. And it does have some, graphics capability. It's basically a studio through the computer. So
David,
one I found.
in case you guys didn't know, David in a former life worked for, was it Cox?
Yeah, Cox Cable.
Cox Cable, where he did video production for their private studio and their commercials for what was it, local access stuff?
Yes.
Okay. So, and he's also the one that produced the video that we presented to National that won us the convention bid. So his expertise in this is by far the best that we've got to come across. He's putting together a video team and a AV department within our division. So if you'd like to participate in that and be a cameraman or learn how to do the production, the directing, post-production, anything like that, reach out to me or reach out to David, and that would really be cool if we could have our own video production department. Now, David, how much is that switcher going to be that you're looking at? Because I went online and I saw several different models, and so I didn't know exactly what you're looking at.
And I can't think of I'm trying to remember the name of the company.
Black Magic.
Thank you. Yeah, Black Magic ATEM Mini Pro is the one I'm looking at, because that one has some extra. The basic model could do the job, and it's about $300, but the Pro model, which is about double that, has the Ethernet to do the live streaming, and then it also has a USB port that I can actually make a recording of it in YouTube's format. So, we can live stream it, and then I can take the recording of it and throw it on our YouTube channel. And that one's running, the list price is about $695. I've been hunting around, various websites, the online dealers, it's kind of that to Amazon's 800 or so. Most of the switcher's pretty much all we need. Everything else we've either got in-house, or it's going to be, maybe a couple HDMI cables for the cameras, but
we've already got.
That's what it's looking like.
We've already got a 50-foot HDMI camera cable right now in our.
Right. So we got one already. Might need one or two more, just depending on how we set up the production. But that's pretty much everything else. It's once you get that switcher, it's all plug and play.
So putting it out to the people that are in our division here, can you guys give me a thumbs up if you guys are in favor of us going ahead and getting that piece of equipment so that we could do that? John, what are you thinking? Trapper, thumbs up. Crumpton, everybody, I think it's pretty much across the board here. I'm Daryl, what are you thinking? Yes. Leo? Hey, wake up there, buddy. I got you. Hey, I see that beautiful background you got there, Leo. It's great to see you, by the way. Glad you're able to join us here, buddy. Mr. Corley, Mr. Ross, what are you guys thinking? Everybody good with this? Okay. So let's see. Dick, I'm going to let you and David work together on the purchase and make how we get it all put together. If that's okay, Dick, if you'll do that for us. Also, Brooks Welling just told me that he's a dealer for Black Magic, and he can order it for us and save us some money. So, Brooks, can you and David Cranda get together? Let's see here. And David, I tell you what, David Brooks, David's email address is on our website as our video, isn't it, Mr. Corley? If it's not, I bet Mr. Corley can get it on there, right? Maybe. You're unmuted. You can talk, Mr. Corley. It's all good.
Oh, yeah, that's no problem.
Okay. So I want to make sure that we get that position on our leadership team put on our website. By the way, Mr. Corley here is doing a fabulous job. I want to thank him again and again for what he does for the division as far as the website is concerned. It's really good. We're going to go ahead and make that purchase, get that going. Thanks, Brooks. We appreciate you helping us out with that. That's so nice of you. Let's see here. Membership report. Mr. Ross, can you tell us, let's see here. There we go. There we go. You're unmuted now, Mike. Tell us what's going on with membership, if you would.
Yeah, good morning. And Mike, thank you for organizing this. It's really great. Pleased to see someone. I'm taking attendance. I'm making notes of how many people are signing up. But real brief, guys, David Compton and I have been working on your attendance. We're the guys that send out the nice emails to you. So currently, despite everything, we're only down a few members. We have 164 members. And just to give you an idea, our neighbors to the east in a much bigger city have 179. So we're not doing so bad. Way down in Houston, that's, of course, the biggest division, 230. So all things considered, we're doing pretty good. One interesting fact, since I'm not writing a call board column for you, is that 9 of our members, roughly 5%, were born in the 1930s. So I wish all of you guys, all of us really, stay well, take care of yourselves, wear that mask where it's appropriate, and let's keep everyone around for a long time. Thanks, Mike.
All right. Thanks, Mike. We appreciate it. Moving on in our agenda here, I want to kick it over to Duane Richardson, and let him talk a little bit about the AP report and the AP program. There's something that's out there that's in the works. Duane, can you bring us up to speed on the virtual judging?
Yeah, certainly. We've got in this new normal that we are all dealing with here. There's been a proposal. There's nothing really set in stone or official about it just yet at this time. But recognizing that we have a serious situation on our hands, the NMRA is taking some steps to allow us to do a somewhat virtual judging. If we have a scenario where a model is very obviously good enough to merit, very high score, probably triple digits or higher, it is something that there's been a proposal made that would allow us to do a virtual judging session. So we would set up something like this maybe and have you host it out in your training room for things like scenery and stuff like that. Or right now it's the model piece of it that some folks are worried about. However, Mike and I did a bit of a training session for Mike on judging here a couple of weeks ago with some really nice photographs that Mr. Crumpton had taken of a project that he was working on. And I was able to go through with Mike, and we were able to review everything right there off of those 4 photographs. And, I feel very confident that this is something that we could do moving forward. So those of you who live in the outlying regions who would like to participate in the AP, this is not going to prevent you. In fact, even if we don't make it official, there's nothing that would prevent you from taking part. I mean, I've driven to Lubbock to judge. I've driven down to Brownwood to judge. So it's not unusual to do it on a Saturday, hop in a car and make a trek out there. So if you want to participate in the AP, I would really, really encourage you guys to do so, because, you've heard me say this time and time again, but it will make you a better modeler. I guarantee it will. And everybody that's doubted me has come back at the end and went, you know what, Duane, you were right. So give it some thought. If we continue down this line and they do make everything official, what we'll probably look at doing, if you have a structure or a car that you want to have judged, there will be a certain criteria, a number of photographs you'll have to take that are very nice, tight, very good definition, good lighting, that kind of thing. Submit those, and then we probably would still even want to follow that up with a Zoom call kind of thing, so that you could take it and move the model around a little bit, give us some different views of it, things to that effect. And we can look at it live as well as review it with the photographs. And if we can come up with a consensus, then, we can come up with some numbers then. The idea being right now is it would be something that would still be followed up in person, just to double check to make sure that everything was good. But after looking at the photographs that David sent of his Campbell's kit that he did, and being able to review those the way Mike and I were, I feel pretty confident that we're not going to have any problems with this. It'll be an interesting way to go about doing things. And it would make judging things like scenery so much easier. Instead of having to drive out to your house and all of that, we could do it live over the internet and be able, and it allows us to get judges from all over the region as well. I mean, I could hook up I can get us judges from Houston, and we can get on a call and take care of it instead of having to dig up, a couple, 3 warm bodies right here in the area to do it too. So it's going to offer up a lot of advantages, I think, over time. It's just kind of waiting and getting it through its growing pains to make sure this is going to fly.
Perfect. Duane, do we have any submissions for anything coming in from this?
I got some paperwork from Joe Lysing that I'll be processing here in the next day or so and sending that up for his volunteer. He recently qualified as of this month, so he's been working really hard for the division, doing a lot of different things behind the scenes. It's funny, guys, the way one of these division things goes is it's like watching a duck cruise across a pond. You don't see it, you don't appreciate it, you just kind of see him gliding across the water, but man, underneath his feet are just giving it hell, and it's kind of what happens behind one of these things. Without the work of our camera crews and things, we don't get these things out to YouTube, and we wouldn't be doing them live going forward without Lysing and some of these guys that even if down to coming in and kicking on the pot of coffee in the morning and setting the sodas out and stuff like that. All of this stuff are little bitty things that nobody really thinks about that often. And, Mike does a great job of giving a shout out to the guys. And I really want to echo that because, we were talking last night, it wasn't that long ago that both of our divisions had been dormant for a couple of decades. And now we're in an opportunity where, somewhere close to 100 modelers get to come to one of 2 different meetings, and 100 each can get to come to a couple of meetings a month and partake of the learning and the fellowship and everything else that goes on in one of these. And it's really exciting to see.
Duane, I just saw Terry Morris hold up a big package here. I think he's fixed to put something in the mail to you for something that he's going to be sending over there. So
excellent.
Hope that's coming. Give a shout out to Mr. McCarthy over in Mississippi who's with us. Pat has got his official and his volunteer paperwork that he's got to submit, and he's ready for that. So that's doing that. Of course, we still got some other folks that have earned things that they just haven't sat down and put the paperwork to. So we really hope you guys get on the board. Now's the time to do it while you're stuck at home. It's a good way to knock it out. And quite honestly, it's not that hard to put the paperwork together. If you have any problems whatsoever, let me know. Yep. Even if you're from a different division, I'll be happy to help you.
Yep, call me.
All you got to do is just reach out there. That's what we're here for. We're going to try to help anybody get the paperwork turned in so that you can get some stuff done. Mr. Armstrong over here, who's going to be doing our clinic for us in just a minute. Mike, you've got prototype modeler in spades, so we need to get Duane and I to come over and take a look at your stuff there, because Duane's never seen your layout, but you've earned prototype modeler because, guys, he's modeled specific cities with the specific buildings and has the rolling stock, and that's really all you got to do to make it all happen. So you could get that prototype modeler certificate in very short order, and quite honestly, that's one of the fewest achieved certificates that's out there. And if you start with that one, it kicks you all the way through, and you can take it and spin off of it to do the rest of your MMR. And you can practically get your MMR with a little bit of extra work. You can use that as a launching pad to get the rest of your MMR done. So you guys really jump in on that AP program. Thanks, Duane. I appreciate it. So we want to see your projects. since you're stuck at home, the stuff you're doing, post it to news@cowcatcherdivision.org. We'd love to see what everybody's working on. That's what Mr. Crumpton did. You know, I'm working on a turntable. I'm also working on the Tyler Depot, the Cotton Belt Depot down in Tyler, to get my prototype modeler as well. So if you have any opportunity to do that paperwork, you're working on projects, post them out there. Let everybody see what you're doing. Everybody's interested. We're all in here to just kind of have some fun with this. So at this time, guys, I want to make an introduction to a gentleman who is going to be doing our presentation for us today. He is retired from the BNSF, where he was General. Mike, I've got you unmuted. So tell me, what was your position again?
When I retired, I was General Director of Maintenance Planning.
General Director of Maintenance Planning. And I'm gonna go ahead, Mike, and make you the host at this time, so that you can go down and you can share your screen and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So, Mike, I'll let you take it over. He's going to be giving us a presentation on curves, spirals, and super elevations, and it's going to be a great presentation, guys.
Okay. Well, thanks, Mike. So, good day to everyone. And what I'll do is give an overview of model railroad curves, and I'll also relate it to the prototype railroad curves, because really everything we do with our modeling is to try to replicate what the prototype railroads do. So we're going to talk about simple curves. I'll tell you what a simple curve is. We're going to talk about compound curves, spiral curves, and super elevation. And I'll do my best to try to keep it from being complicated, because it really isn't. It's pretty straightforward stuff. I will refer often to Burlington Northern standards, not BNSF, but Burlington Northern. I started my career with the Burlington Northern, and of course ended up with the merger at BNSF. But I happen to have a lot of standards that I was able to retain from Burlington Northern, and that's why I kind of refer to Burlington Northern when we talk about some of the intricacies of curves and that type of thing. In this photo that you're looking at, though, before I move forward with the curve presentation, is to just kind of point out on my particular railroad, my model railroad, I use 3/4 inch plywood for my, what I will call the sub road bed, or the sub road bed. And then on top of that, I place HO scale cork, which is about 3/16 inch thick. And you can see, of course, in the photo here that the lighter colored material, that's the ballast, and that would be what's formed by the cork. And then the darker colored material that you see in the photo, that's my attempt at establishing a view of subballast along the track. Subballast is a material that's underneath the ballast, and in new construction, you always place, railroads today, or any kind of road construction or railroad construction, they're going to place subballast in, on top of the sub road bed. And years ago, like in my case, the Rock Island Railroad, there really wasn't a lot of sub-ballast. It was cinders, which, of course, cinders are spent coal from the steam locomotives, very plentiful, very available. And that's what oftentimes they used for ballast. And as they kept raising the track and surfacing, those cinders became the sub-ballast, so to speak. So it's kind of an evolutionary thing. So we'll go on here to the curve presentation. Simple curves. Most railroad curves, and again in the prototype world, are what we call simple curves. Essentially, a simple curve is nothing more than a curve that has a constant radius. Now, for model railroads, we use a trammel to draw the curve center line. And a trammel is nothing more than a yardstick or a piece of wood. You pivot the trammel on one end. The fixed end will be the pivot point, and then you have holes drilled. Actually, you don't even have to have holes drilled. If you can hold a pencil or a marker steady, you can do that. But I'm not steady, so I use holes, and you just take a pencil. In my case, I use pencil to poke it through the hole at the given radius that you want to achieve for a curve, and then just mark that curve out as a constant radius curve. And this is just a drawing that shows you what a simple curve looks like. A simple curve, really, curves just tie together tangents. Now, when I use the term tangent, tangent means straight track. That's all it means. That's a common term used on the railroad or in any highway work. Tangent means straight. So a simple curve is just going to join the tangents together. Now, spiral curves are different. They are what we refer to, they have, people often refer to a spiral curve as an easement curve or a transition curve. Spiral curves have a changing radius. So you can see versus the simple curve that has a constant radius, a spiral has a changing radius. And a spiral curve is used to ease the lateral forces entering into the curve. So for example, your locomotives, all your rolling stock on a prototype railroad, as they're entering that curve, depending on the speed and whatnot, you will have a spiral curve that's used then to gradually introduce the superelevation into the simple curve. Railroads typically use the cubic parabola spiral curve. That's no big deal. You don't have to remember that. All that means is the parabolic spiral curve is a curve that is of changing radius. Spirals are not necessarily needed in lower speed and lower degree or larger radius curves. And when I say lower degree, I'm going to explain that here in a little bit, because railroads, prototype railroads, use the term, they designate curves in terms of degree versus highways that designate curves in terms of radius. And we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. But all curves don't need spirals on the real railroad. In fact, a number of curves on your freight railroads today, they just introduce, they have elevation in the curve and they run off uniformly out onto the tangent. That was a Burlington Northern standard years ago, and it's still used today. The length of the spiral is based on the speed that you're running through the curve and the required superelevation. So this just shows you that you've got a simple curve, which is a curve, again, of constant radius, and a spiral, a cubic parabola, that's just a curve of changing radius. Typically, a cubic parabola is kind of it's a U-shaped curve if you ever plotted it out, but we're only using a portion of that cubic parabola when we design a spiral for a railroad curve. Now, I throw this in here because, again, you can have curves without spirals, but in the event that you do need a spiral, and again, that'll be determined by the speed and the amount of superelevation in the curve, and of course, the degree of the curve, how sharp the curve is, or the radius of the curve. And to fit a spiral, the simple curve has to be shifted inward. So this drawing just shows the dashed line that is an indicator that the curve has moved slightly inward, so that where you see it says TS, which would be tangent or straight track to spiral, and then TC is where you're going from the transition curve or spiral to the simple curve. We'll talk about compound curves. Compound curves are curves of different radius or radii. Compound curves are used where the planned alignment will not accommodate the use of a constant radius curve. So here's an example. Let me see here. I wanted to show you that the R1 is one radius in this particular curve. And then we've got R2 and R3, and all three of those curves are of different radius, and yet they're considered one curve. On the railroad, again, prototype railroad, curves are measured in terms of, they're actually designated by the milepost. So say this particular curve here, R1, R2, R3 was in milepost 90 on the railroad, that would be called curve 90. And the next curve that reverses away from that, if that was still within that milepost 90, it would be called curve 90A. So you can see if you have multiple curves within a milepost, you might have 15 curves if it's a real curvy territory. They'll start off with the particular milepost 90, then 90A, B, C, D, right through the end of the alphabet. I've never seen a situation where there were more than 26 curves. So, but in this case, you can see that compound curves are needed for situations where you're really confined with, in this case, in this drawing here, the river and of course mountains or hills that you're working around. Hey, Mike.
Yes, sir.
Question, Mike Mackey. For some reason here, I'm not able to advance my
your slideshow.
What's that?
You can't get your slide to advance.
Yeah, the slide. I lost my. What happened there? Oh, there it is. Nope, we're back. Hey, we're good.
All right,
Got
good.
it. I found it. Okay. Now, what I did is included a photo. This is on my layout of a compound curve. I've actually got a couple of them here I'll show you, but this particular one, you can see up in the upper portion of the picture, you can see a switch stand up there with the red target, and that is a curved turnout. So that's actually a switch that's in the curve. And if you go to the lower portion of the photo, the track is entering the helix, or one of the helixes on my layout. So with those kind of two fixed points, so to speak, where the turnout had a certain degree or certain radius of curvature, to meet that properly and to meet the helix, I ended up with a compound curve. This is just looking at it from a little higher angle. You can see the turnout a little bit better up in the kind of toward the upper center, upper left center of the picture. And then again, the helix is down toward the right. Kind of in the middle of the picture, you'll see those signs. Those are speed signs. I actually have speed zones on my model railroad for prototypical operation where I require the trains to slow down for a restriction. In this case, the restriction is the turnout that's in the curve. And that's about the point where the compound curve transition takes place. So you're coming out of one radius curve into another radius curve at that point. This is the second location on my layout where I have a compound curve. And this, again, this is coming out of the second helix on my layout. And it's meeting another location where it meets up with tangent track. And in order to make that fit just right, I ended up with another compound curve. Had I gone with a simple curve, which certainly would have been an option, I would have, the railroad would have pushed further out into the aisleway and taken up a little more space. So I just figured I'd use a compound curve and have a little more aisle width.
Hey, Mike, before you advance, I want to point out something to everybody. Look down in the bottom left of the picture. That's the floor underneath Mike's layout. You can eat off of it. It's completely clean underneath the layout. This man is sick. I don't know what his disease is, but he is sick, okay? It is that clean everywhere. There is not anything stored under his layout at all. It's completely open underneath there, and the floor is immaculate. It's just a tremendous layout. You're to be commended, Mike.
Well, that's nice of you to say that. I appreciate it. Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about radius versus degree of curve. I mentioned earlier that prototype railroads talk about or designate curves in terms of degree of curve. Highway and road departments describe curves in terms of radius, in radius in feet. So a curve might be a 3,522 foot radius curve. Prototype railroads describe curves in terms of degree, and I'll show you a drawing of what that is and try to describe it a little more clearly. Of course, on our model railroads, we describe curves in terms of radius in inches, and that's how we describe curves for our model railroads. So a degree of curve. These are both simple curves, the one on the left, the one on the right, both simple. The degree is defined as if you take a 100-foot cord and run it to 2 points on that curve, the angle that's subtended by the lines that run down to the center of the curve, and that's D, that's shown as D degrees, that is your degree of curve. And you might say, wow, why did railroads do that? I mean, why wouldn't they just stick with radius? And I guess I can't answer that question. I'm not sure, why they went with degree, but I can tell you that having spent many, many years of my career out inspecting track, you get real good at looking at a curve and kind of knowing what degree it is. You can tell if it's maybe a 1 degree curve or if it's a 6 degree curve. And I'm not saying you can tell it right. I never was able to tell it right on the money. If I did, I got lucky. But it gave you a pretty good idea of how sharp a curve was. And your typical mainline curves where you're seeing high-speed operation, where trains are running 70 or freight trains at 70 miles an hour, Amtrak at 79 miles an hour or 90. They're going to be doing that through your 1 degree and 1 degree 30-minute curves. When you start getting into 2 degree, 3 degree, 4 degree, 5 degree on up, you're going to have restrictions on those curves. And obviously, because of the sharpness of them. A sharp curve on a mainline railroad is 10 degrees is very sharp. And BN or BNSF, UP, all the majors, they've got 10 degree curves on their main lines, on heavy tonnage main lines even. And it's just, again, part of the restriction you deal with when you're trying to work that railroad around barriers. So we'll turn our attention now to superelevation. So superelevation counteracts centrifugal force. And you feel that when you're in an automobile and you go around a corner and your body wants to lean one way, that's centrifugal force. So superelevation is just raising the outside rail of the curve so that you're counteracting that, so that you don't force yourself out to the outside. And you can imagine with locomotives and rolling stock, as heavy and as massive as that equipment is, that when you get into a curve, it would be pretty easy to flip it over if you didn't have the proper amount of superelevation in the curve. So superelevation increases gradually through the spiral, if there is a spiral in place, up to the maximum design elevation. Now, in the case where no spiral is used, the superelevation is provided throughout the full length of the curve and is run off uniformly on the tangent. Now, that was a Burlington Northern standard, and railroads still practice that today. Just as information on the Burlington Northern, the maximum superelevation that we had designed into a curve was 5 inches, and the minimum was 3/4. So basically, any mainline curve had to have at least 3/4 of an inch of elevation. Now, that would be a curve that would be a low speed, a very shallow curve, that type of thing. So this is a drawing to kind of show you what the spiral and the simple curve would look like with their elevation. That top solid line where it says tangent So tangent is coming into the straight track coming into the curve. So TS means you're going from your tangent to your spiral in this case. And then SC is where you're going from your spiral into your curve. In this particular example, I'm using a 50-foot spiral. And you notice on the dashed line toward the bottom, that would be looking at the track from a side view. If you were standing on the side of the track looking at it to see how does that elevation increase up to the full elevation. And in this example, the elevation that I chose for the curve is 2.5 inches. So you would start out, of course, on your tangent track, your cross level or elevation is 0 inches, right at the tangent to spiral. And then every 10 feet, you can see it increases by 1/2 inch up to the full 2.5 inches. Then once you reach that 2.5 inches, when you get into the simple curve, you carry that all the way through the simple curve until you get to the other end of the curve, and then you taper the super elevation off back to tangent. So model railroad curves do not need spirals. Model railroad curves do not need super elevation. Super elevation and spirals in a model railroad are essentially for looks only. There are a number of ways to achieve super elevation in a model railroad curve. And let's talk about that. So on my particular layout, I used balsa wood just because it was easy to work with and worked for me. And I used thin pieces. Now, when I say I use thin pieces, how thin were they? And I'll explain that in the next slide, because the thickness is what gives you the super elevation that you're striving for in your model railroad curve. So I used these thin pieces, about 1/4 inch wide balsa wood strips, glued them right to the cork road bed on the high side of the rail. The pieces that I used were about 3 inches long, and they were placed, since I did not use spirals. I don't use spirals on my curves on my model railroad. So I took and placed 3 inches of the strip out onto the tangent so that I could run my super elevation off uniformly onto the tangent. What I then did is I sanded the last 6 inches on each end of the curve to achieve the consistent taper for the super elevation. And of course, this then allows for the runoff to be consistent on each end of the curve. And as I said, I did not incorporate spiral easements into my layout. I think the spirals are neat, but I just didn't do it. So this is really a drawing of what I was just talking about. So if you're looking at the top portion where it says sub road bed, and you see the cork. So the little thin piece of material with the red diagonal lines, that's my balsa wood piece that I put in on the high side of the curve, and I just put it right out at the edge of the tie. So if you use, for HO scale, if you use 1/16 inch balsa, that gives you about a 5.5 inch prototype elevation. The 1/32 inch thick balsa would give you about 2 3/4 inch elevation, and then 1/64 would give you about 1 3/8 inch prototype elevation. I used mostly 1/16 because I kind of went for the max because it gives you that nice lean of the equipment, and you can really see it well when you're rolling through the curve. And then on the bottom portion, the drawing where you see it says tangent, and because I did not use a spiral, you can see the PT is just where I went from, basically I went from the tangent to my simple curve, and PT stands for point of tangent. So you're coming off the curve onto your tangent. And I used 3 inches out onto the tangent and then sanded the taper on that 6 inches. So the lower drawing, the very one on the bottom that says taper balsa wood for 6 inches, that's, if you look at it from the side, how I tapered it down from the full thickness back to 0 at the tangent, back onto the tangent. So model railroad easement curves. I'm going to talk through this, and it's going to sound really chunky. It's going to sound like, what in the world are you talking about? And there's a picture that comes afterwards, and we kind of go back and forth. And you might say, well, why don't you show the picture first? Well, let me explain it first, and then let's look at the picture, and then we can kind of go back and forth if we need to. But for model railroad easement curves, what we do, if you really want one on your railroad, you would offset the simple curve from the tangent by about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch. The offset and the length of the easement curve will vary with the curve radius, and I would say you'd use maybe you'd want your spiral to be maybe 12 inches long or 15 inches. It just depends. Whatever would look good to you is what you'd want to do. I know that sounds crazy, but it's really kind of a matter of what you prefer. Mark the location where the tangent is square with the offset curve, and then equally divide the length of the easement on both sides of the mark. Then you take a piece of flexible material, either a piece of wood molding, or I've got a little, I know the one thing I would have used had I done these is just like a 1/4 inch square balsa wood that's very flexible that you could just lay on there and mark. And what you'll have to do is, of course, hold it in place with either pins or brads or a nail or something. And then just trace the alignment to create a smooth transition. So let's look at the drawing of this. Maybe that'll clear it up a little better. So you can see the simple curve with the constant radius that's shown at the top. And then you have your tangent on the left side, which is the dashed straight line. You would offset those two by about 1/2 or 3/4 of an inch, and then take your flexible material and just mark it, just set it on your simple curve and back down to your tangent, and draw your line accordingly, and there's your spiral. It's pretty straightforward, and it does make for a neat effect on a model railroad. There's no doubt about it. Would I do it if I'd probably consider it if I was going back to build another railroad, but I don't think I'll be doing that. Then I just thought I'd throw in a couple of photos of the cars on my layout going into a curve. So here we have obviously a high profile tri-level auto rack that has just entered a curve. And if you go back toward the caboose and look back on tangent, you can clearly see how the super elevation is introduced gradually, and then the car makes its lean into the curve. Same thing with the locomotive coming around the curve. It makes for just a very neat effect. So there you go. Everything you ever wanted to know about curves on the prototype and model railroad. Be glad to answer any questions. Let's see, do I need to give this back to you, Mike? Okay. Let me see what I can do here. Okay. Okay. Are we good, Mike?
And Mike, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
I'll start out. Wonderful presentation. Is 6 inches transition enough if you're operating long wheelbase steam engines? I wonder that.
Yes, I think so, because now I have a Mikado, a 282, and I know it's not an articulated engine, but it has not been I've had no problem with, and I've had people bring over, in fact, I'm glad you asked that question, Michael, because I had a friend of mine who's got a Rio Grande articulated engine, and he brought it over and ran. This has been a few years ago, and it ran flawlessly. So I think 6 inches would work. Oh, hang on a second here. Hey, Mike, I don't see a stop share on my screen here. Okay, top of the screen, yeah. Yes. Okay. It is at the bottom.
And then you've got a share.
Yeah.
You've also got who are the hosts on there, I believe.
It says no. I don't. I mean, on the. I don't see. I see. No, I don't see anything. I see. Share screen is.
You see the bottom where it says participants.
Hang on a second here. At the bottom where it says participants. Yes, media. Yes, I do. I do see it. Yes.
Click on participants. You're going to pop out on the right hand side.
I do. I see it.
Okay. Now you see where it says host.
Let's see. Host. Yeah.
Click on my name up there.
Okay. Let me find you, Mike. I gotta get you. Gosh. Hang on a second, Mike. There you are. Okay.
Now you should see a pop out on there where you can make me the host.
Okay. So, well, it says, okay, there's more. Hang on a second. I'm so sorry.
No, this is not your fault.
Okay, make host. I got it. Here it is. Okay. Do you want to change the host to Mike Mackey? Yes. Okay. All right. There you go. Hopefully.
All right, guys. And by the way, that was not Mike's fault. That's my fault, and I apologize. I should have made you a co-host, and that
Okay.
way we wouldn't have had that problem right there. So,
Okay.
Duane's got his hand raised. Duane's got a question. Let me unmute Duane. Okay. What you
All
got?
right.
So you were talking earlier in the very beginning about sub-road bed. Is that a different texture of gravel? Is it a different material?
Yeah, when new construction is performed, the sub-ballast material is on the BN and BNSF, we referred to it as fines because it was a very fine material. It wasn't as fine as sand because sand you can't compact very well, but it was a granular, really just kind of a breakdown of some of your granite type materials, almost like decomposed granite, if you've ever seen that, that's used on walkways and stuff like that. But this material was really excellent material in that it allows water to drain and shed, but it's very solid.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
All right. Brooks, and by the way, if you have a question, just raise your hand and it gives them to me in order and I'll call on you. So I've got Brooks and then we'll get Mark Lachey. So Brooks, let me unmute you here. And by the way, I appreciate you stepping up and helping us out with that, Brooks. I've already forwarded that email over to David Cranda. David, you should have that in your inbox. That's got Brooks's contact information, everything on there. Okay.
You're welcome. I think we've been emailing here, so I think hopefully we can help you out with that. Yeah, my question was, you're using balsa under the ties to get the elevation. Is there any reason for the balsa over like basswood, or is that just just what you had to prefer to work with?
Yeah, I found it real easy to, balsa's so easy to trim and just work with. And since I was doing so much of it, I just found it to be excellent. A lot of people use styrene. Styrene strips are fine. Really, anything that'll raise that rail and stay in place. But the balsa works really nice. And I used wood glue a lot, so that helped.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
All right. Mark Lachey.
Hey, Mike, thank you for your presentation. Very nicely done. Does the use of super elevation and spiral curves and that kind of thing I have a very small layout. My room is only 11 by 12.
Right.
It's an narrow gauge layout. And I'm just wondering, if I were to redo that, would there be any value for me running narrow gauge equipment in a small space and trying to super elevate curves versus what you're doing in a much larger space, I suspect?
I think the only benefit to you is going to be if you like that look of the equipment leaning into the curve. Otherwise, years ago, back in the day, and especially on narrow gauge railroads where your speeds were slow going through the mountains, maybe 25 miles an hour, I doubt that many curves were even super elevated. They may have had just ½ inch or 3/4 of an inch of super elevation in the curves, but probably not much.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. Jason Parham, let me get you. There you go, bud.
Hey, greetings from Alabama, everybody.
All right.
All right,
Thank
just
you for being here,
anyway.
bud. It's great to have you guys. We're you joined a little bit later, I believe, but we've got people from Kuwait. We've got people all across the state of Texas. We've got somebody in Scotland. It's pretty amazing. I'm pretty excited about the response we're getting here today.
Yeah, I've had a little technical difficulty. I had to switch. I had a computer freeze up. I had to switch from the computer to my phone, back to the computer. Once I got it to where I could resuscitate it and everything. But anyway, I enjoyed it. Great clinic, Mike. Got a question. Since you mentioned, since we do, as model railroaders, speak in the language of radius, especially in inches of radius, as opposed to feet or degree and not degrees, which railroads do. So, given a point of perspective, can you kind of give us, like, say, in common radiuses, what would that equate to in a degree? On a prototype, like, say, I know a lot of times everybody goes with like a 30-inch radius curve, for example, in HO scale.
Yeah.
Like, what would that equate to various degrees and things?
And that's a really, really great question, Jason. I don't have the accurate answer for you. I can tell you that the curves we typically use, the curves on my railroad, now my minimum radius is 30 inches. And I think my maximum is 40. So there's not a huge spread, but that 30-inch curve, which isn't bad on an HO scale railroad, is probably close. And I obviously can be calculated, but it's probably close to a 6-degree curve. It's a sharp curve. It's one that you wouldn't be running real fast through on a mainline railroad. You might be running 35 through that curve. But yeah, what your question is a very good one, and I think the point is that we our curves on our model railroads for the most part are pretty sharp. And when you get up 40 inches and greater, those are nice curves. I mean, if you had the space to do, if I had the space to do 38-inch and greater, I would do those because it just looks better. It looks more realistic. Less than 38, and again, I'm down to 30 inches at a lot of places on my railroad. It's sharp.
Any other question there, Jason? Oh, I think you're muted again. Hang on a second. Did you have any other questions, Jason?
No, I think that's it. I appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks,
By the way, guys, at the bottom of your screen where it says participants down there, there's a place there where you can raise your hand if you've got a question. I've got a couple of things here in chat. Let's see here. Ryan Gorley says 30 degrees is about 30-inch is about 26 degrees. So there's a way we can go back in there and look at that. Duane, did you have something you want to say?
Yeah, there's a couple things I want to chime in on. Mike hit it really right on the head. We turn much tighter turns than on a model railroad than we do on a real thing, and this presents some challenges in our rolling stock as well. Because if you truly build a freight car to the real specs with everything underneath it, there's a lot of times it won't make the turns that we require. So you'll see guys will put arches in there to give room for the wheels to pivot and things like that. And these are requirements that are born out of us having to turn much tighter curvatures. We've got an advantage when we lay these things. We have restrictions of how much room space we have, but we're working and we lay the track and then we put the landmass in afterwards, where what Mike was doing was working with the landmass that was in place and trying to figure out how to get the track around it. And it's a much different mindset. And also, one other thing, back to Mark's question about working with them on the narrow gauge, and Mike again nailed it right on the head. They weren't going fast enough to need curvature. In talking with an old section man from the DNRGW, he told me that the only super elevated curve on the entire line was in northern New Mexico. The Army Corps of Engineers built a reservoir on one of the Ute Indian reservations up there. I think it was either Ute or Navajo. And when they did, it was going to take out part of the old main line. And the Army Corps of Engineers relayed the main line for the DNRGW through there, including building a bridge or two, and it had the only super elevated curves on the entire line.
Makes sense.
All right, Tom, let me unmute you. And what's your question, Tom?
Well, good morning. Just a comment. Obviously, I read the old John Armstrong things about super elevation and easement. He talked about coefficient of lurch was the term he used for that lateral dislocation.
Okay. Yeah.
But I will say that my experience in working with people, unlike Mike, who have very narrow curves, is that easement is a way to cheat to try and make a curve appear bigger to your rolling stock. And it doesn't. So, for example, if you really want to have 24-inch radius curves, but you can't, quite make it work, you can cheat a 22 with an easement and in similar space, and it does allow things like, and I have firsthand experience, a full-length Walther's passenger car get around that corner. But not recommended, but it is an 11th hour thing. Sometimes it works.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Tom. Very good point.
All right, let's see. Mike has a question here. Go ahead, Mike. Which Mike? There it is right there. Mike? I saw you had your hand raised. Where are you? Well, I'm trying to figure out who is just Mike on here. I don't see. It just says Mike, and it's doesn't have your last name. But you're unmuted, so if you wanted to talk to me, let's try it again. Well, it's not letting me. It's not letting me find you here. Hang on just a minute. Let me see if I can find you. There we go. Well, you're the very last person on here, but it's not letting me unmute you there, Mike. I don't know why it's not doing that. Maybe it's on your end, but I'm trying to unmute you so you can talk. Maybe you can give me your question in the chat area down at the bottom in the chat, and it'll come to me and I can relay your question for you. Who else has any more questions? Nobody? Wow, okay. So at this time, we still got a little bit of time left here. Oh, there we go. Barry, let's see what Barry has. What you got, Barry? Talk to me.
Morning, Mike. And Mike, thanks for the presentation. I'm just beginning to build my layout, and I've got it. It's going to be about 19 by 22, so I'm going to have some fairly decent curves.
Yep.
And some of the guys around the area here that I've talked to, we get together here and there. They say the transition into a curve, the easement is something I should look at, just, because I'm looking at possibly doing some full-length passenger cars and some longer engines, because I have a couple of electric Milwaukee engines that were pretty good sized.
Yeah.
And I'm from South Dakota. That's where the Milwaukee was anyway.
Right.
But the easements, I understand better now what I'm trying to do. And also super elevation. I got kind of a very brief primer on it. Back when I worked for the Santa Fe, I worked in the superintendent's office and got to know a couple of the engineers. And I said, what are these little square copper tags with the numbers on them? They said that's how they mark the super elevation out on the line. And, makes a lot of sense, and how they do it and how often they, would raise it up. And so it brought back a lot of remembering from back then, the very brief introduction I had to super elevation. And one experience I saw down at Tower 55 one time, there was a freight with a bunch of long flats coming in, and they came around the curve, tried to go too fast, and string lined it.
Oh, yeah.
That term that night.
Yeah.
So super elevation works both ways, I guess, depending on how much of a hurry you're in.
That's right. Yeah. String lining is a real
thanks
problem.
for the presentation.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
For those that aren't familiar with the area where we are, Tower 55 is a major junction in downtown Fort Worth, where at the time when it was really built, Daryl Cowles, I'm going to ask you, you probably are the foremost guy on that to help us. Daryl, tell me about, now Daryl, it's not letting me unmute you either for whatever reason. There we are. Now you're unmuted. Daryl, can you give us a little bit of explanation about Tower 55 and how many railroads went through there?
It's what we feature as our center point or our focus point for the model railroad we're building. It was the busiest intersection in the Southwest for many, many years. And this was controlled by by the Texas Pacific was originally built that. And of course, the tower was right there by their station. And then when MOPAC took it over and eventually UP took it over, they controlled that tower. And we've been very fortunate. We've got several people that have approached us that actually worked in the tower and has given us some details about all of the details inside the tower. Ken Marcoux, one of our super builders, has replicated Tower 55 exactly. This included all those windows, and he built those pane by pane, basically, several times. But we have a very accurate replica of it, but it was a very important crossing. We're modeling 7 railroads that cross that area, and it'll be real busy when we get it done.
Thanks, Daryl. Mike Walters, I've got you unmuted now. You can ask your question. No? Okay. Well, then let's try it a different way. Mike Ross. Where is Mike Ross? There you are. Go ahead and Mike, I'll let you ask along that question.
Yeah, the Mike that was isolated was Mike Walter, an outstanding O-scale modeler who was on just he called me and told me he's on a really old machine without a camera, asked me to just pass things on. He said he had a table that compared degree curves with radius and just wanted to throw the numbers out just for interest for people. Of 1 degree curve in HO is 360 inches. That's kind of wide. 9 degrees is 40 inches. So someone else said 30 inches was we do run with pretty narrow curves.
Very true. Very, very true.
So the thing that, and I was just typing a question back. Jason Parham asked if Tower 55 is still there. Yes, for the moment. They're about to tear it down, which is unfortunate. But they have. They're about. I heard here a couple of weeks ago they're about to tear it down. So it's a crying shame, but thus is the way of the towers right now. So. Let's see here. Any other questions for Mike? Mike, excellent job. I want to unmute everybody so you can all give him a round of applause.
Thank you.
You did a great job. We really appreciate it, Mike, and thanks for stepping up.
Yeah, you're welcome.
But Regan's friend Skylar.
It is what it is.
I was talking to him yesterday. We were sitting on the couch. I was looking at my Etsy and I was like, "You would have found it."
All right. So now we still got a little bit of time left over before we knock off at noon. I got one more thing that I want to share with you guys, and I'm gonna let Duane Richardson talk about it. There was a clinic that was given in Division 3 last week or the week before, I can't remember. And one of the guys that was doing the clinic is it Pete Steinmetz, I believe. Is that correct, Duane?
Yes, it is. Yes, it was.
And Pete was doing a clinic, and during that clinic, he was talking about these AK weathering pencils right here. You can order them directly from the company. I ordered mine on a Thursday and received them the following Tuesday from Spain. Okay, so this is where you get these things. And when they shipped them to me, the entire package, and I'm going to let Duane show you this in just a second, but the entire package of pencils, there's 2 sets in here. See, there's the first group of them, and then the second group of them right here. And they're weathering pencils. They're used a lot in the military game or the military modeling area. But they, in addition to that, and this is why I'm rattling on here for a second, one of the things Duane told me, because Duane ordered a pack for his, I think Pat McCarthy's been using these for quite some time. They also put in a bottle of paint that they use in their brand of paint. This is the AK acrylic, and it just happens to be whatever they throw in here. This is a tan yellow color that they threw in for free. You also get a brochure and a color chart here that talks about all of their different colors and the match that they have to those colors. And another one thing that I got, and this is what I got that Duane didn't get for whatever reason, this is a conversion chart that converts their colors to Maya, Vallejo, and several other brands. So this is something you can look forward to as freebies. But at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Duane and let him explain a lot about these weathering pencils.
Yeah, these things, Pete introduced them to me in his clinic, and I've been using the Prismacolor colored pencils now for a number of years, and it's something else that I picked up from the military modelers. And Pete made the comment that he liked these better because they actually stuck a little better. He said they may have more, some sort of oil in them or something like that. And I thought that was kind of an interesting notion. I started looking around because he had mentioned they were a little hard to come by. And sure enough, there are a lot of military modelers, and the bulk of the really, really good ones seem to live in Europe. And excuse me, there's companies like AK and MiG and some of the others that cater to guys who build tanks and that kind of dioramas. And when I went out and started looking around, I found he was right. They are a little hard to come by in the States. There were a few companies that offered them. They wanted about $65 to $70 for a set. They're not available on Amazon right now. The Amazon does have a few of the smaller sets. So there'll be like 4 or 5 pencils in a smaller set, but they make 37 different colors. And when you buy the big box, like what I have and what Mike was showing you, you get all of them in the box. So it's a little more cost effective to get them that way. In digging around around, I found the best price was to go straight to AK and order them over there. They were everything's priced in euros, so they were I think they were 38 euros when I ordered mine. They were 37 when Mike got his. It's about 15 euros for the shipping, but again, it's coming from Spain, and I ordered mine on a Sunday evening, like about 8 o'clock at night, and DHL dropped it off on my front porch on Wednesday. So. Yeah, it's a little bit pricey for shipping, but they do get them here in a big hurry.
They ship DHL to mine as well. So
yeah, so I'm going to switch my cameras here and get you guys looking straight down on my workbench and see what I can do about showing you some of this. I didn't get a chance to rearrange my lighting any, so I apologize for that. It's either really, really bright or it's a little on the dark, man. There, we're going to have to turn the other overhead on here. So it's going to get a little blue here, y'all. There we go. So what I'm working with, or what I started playing with, was this old, it's a Thomas York casting of a O-scale riveted tank. And it was already spray painted this rusty color, and you can see a few chips on it here and there. And when I started playing with it, what I ended up getting was this.
Duane, I'm gonna make you a host so you can share your screen.
I don't need to share my screen. This is all going to be live.
Well, I mean, you can make your screen. Okay, I'm just going to let you do that, but we can see it bigger and better if you did it the other way, but that's okay.
So this is what we came up with, just playing around with it. The pencils themselves are watercolor based, so you can actually draw it on like you would with a Prismacolor, but you have the advantage then of following up with some water. And I was just playing around with a casting this morning that I had, and this is a bad resin casting I had some air bubbles in it. And this is kind of those colors are really bright, a little garish, right? Now look at the difference. And all that is playing around with a few rust-colored pencils and using them with a little bit of water to create a bit of a wash. And the pencils that are in this set are all colors. Excuse me, allergies are killing me this morning. They're all geared for weathering. I mean, it is truly a weathering set. It's unlike buying a Prismacolored set where they figure you're going to be doing portraits or landscapes or something like that. They're really thinking you're going to be doing weathering with this kind of stuff. So all the colors really lend themselves to earth tones and rust tones and things like that. And they've got a handful of metallics as well. But what I started working off of was they have a dark rust, they have a medium rust, and a light rust. So they've got 3 that are dedicated just to the rust colors alone. But then you add in the vivid orange and the strong ochre colors in here, and you have a really nice range of color options here from start to finish. And it's really simple to apply these things, and I'll pull this up and work with it here. I like to do my weathering from dark to light. Your dark is your shadows, your light are your highlights, and your shadows should be in the background. So always start with the darker colors, and I'll just rotate this barrel around a little bit and start on another set of seams. So if I come in here.
Hey, Duane.
Yes, sir.
Let me interrupt you just for a second. Donna Orr's been using this platform for a long time, and she just reached out to me and said, if you tell everyone to go to the upper right-hand corner of the of your screen, you can click on speaker view, and it's going to make Duane's screen a lot bigger so you can see what he's doing.
Oh yeah, yeah. If you don't run your screen maximized, you're not going to be able to see this very clearly.
That's what I was trying to get to a minute ago. So yeah.
That's on their end, not mine. So you can see here, I dipped it in just a little bit of regular water, and it turned it into almost a paint, and it will let you flow it down. Now you can then come back in, and I don't like dipping the whole brush in. I dip just the tips of it in, and even then wipe a lot of it off on my thumb, and I want it to be just slightly damp, and drag this around a little bit and do a few strokes just to give it a bit of a streaking effect. And this one, as dry as it will get, a little on the cloudy side. So I'm trying to get it to run a little bit. And I'm just right now just going in and setting in a few shadows. So if we turn the barrel over a little and we start drawing this in, now you can see now it's a kind of a fine pencil line. And it's not giving you that definition. However, with your slightly damp brush, you can come in and feather that around and And again, it's a little bit high, it's a little dark, but we can come back in and you can blend this with a lot of different things. You can use makeup sponges. My daughter's in theater. She does a lot of she's learning how to do special effects makeup. My wife was in the stage stuff, doing a lot of dancing and things like that for years and years. So they both have a pretty steady selection of makeup things. And as they wear out one of these, like this sponge here's got a tear in it, so they don't want to use it anymore. So I get it. And you can use these to kind of blend them around and soften some edges. You can slightly dampen a fingertip and use that as well. But
Sally Beauty Supply.
Sally Beauty Supply is the God's secret to model railroaders. If you're not from the Dallas area, I don't know how far Sally's reach of influence expands, but all it is it's open to the public, but it's a beauty supply place where salons can go in and buy all sorts of things. Another good source here in the Dallas area is a place called Camera Ready Photography over in the Carrollton Farmers Branch area. They not only have some studio space, but they also have a full makeup department in there, and they sell to the public. But the reason these places are really important is you can go in and buy makeup sponges for pan pastels, and you can get small brushes. You can get the big thing that I buy over at Sally's also is the emery boards. Because you go to Walmart, you get an emery board, and you pretty much have one to pick from. You go over to Sally's, you get their nice big wide thick ones, and you can buy them in various grits from like 80 coarse all the way out to 2,000 or 3,000 for when you're doing polishing work. So you can come in here, and let me grab a darker color here. So here's a little gunmetal. We can come in here and we can go back into our corner here and add just a little darker shade in here to give us just a little more shadow. And we'll take that and get it to where it runs down around the edges a little bit. All you're doing basically is coming in and layering these colors in. So you can come in, maybe lightly turn it on its side a little bit and layer some of this on here, and then come back in again and feather it out. And you do reach a point, and this is a plaster casting, so it sucks the water up relatively quickly. Even though it does have this paint on it, it's still pretty porous. So some of these you're going to have to do it for a little bit and then give it a second or two, a couple of minutes to dry to get an idea, because that looks really dark, but when it dries out, it's going to be more like this up here where it's really, really subtle. So it's a do a little bit, let it dry, do a little bit and let it dry. And you're just layering colors like you would in any other weathering presentation. You're just kind of working them around. And like I say, I was able to take it and get, that kind of a look out of it. So it's all in playing with them. But when you boil it all down, these pencils are less than $2 a piece when you buy the set, even with the shipping and everything. And it's a really neat little toy. And if you get an opportunity, maybe even bounce out to Amazon and look at the little 4 or 5 color sets, and maybe just get you the rust set and order those in and start playing around with them. I would recommend not getting a powered pencil sharpener for any of your artist pencils. It tends to make a really long point, tends to chew the pencil up and use it up really quickly, and most of it goes down the drain in shavings. Get you just the old-fashioned hand-cranked one, and you won't won't use up as much of your pencil. Now, one other thing
Sally
I'll
Beauty
say,
Supply, Duane.
yeah, Hobby Lobby, Walmart, any of the places with a good
I'm just saying
pencil.
that Sally Beauty Supply has a sharpener that used for eyeliner pencils.
Yeah, you can get one of those. Prismacolor actually sells one you can buy over at Hobby Lobby that has 2 different sizes in it. So if you want to have a really long point on it so that you can turn it on its side and work with it sideways, you get a lot of exposed, and I'll use the term lead, just because it's something we're all familiar with. So you can turn it sideways and work with it this way, but it's also got a smaller setting, so you get a much finer point for when you're working it down in all the little nooks and crannies. These are, again, a watercolor pencil. And what I was working with before, I would dip it in the water and it would soften it up. The longer you soak it, the longer it will stay in a paint-like state. But when this dries back out, and what I'm doing, I dip it in a couple of seconds and work with it, and it stays wet, and it turns it into a paint for 5 or 6 seconds. And then when it dries back out again, it is just as hard as it was when it started. So it's not like it causes this to go mushy and then it goes bad and then you got to sharpen the pencil and you're wasting it. It goes right back to normal again, within seconds. And I've only had mine for a couple of weeks and I've just been, playing around with it a little bit. But, when you can go from that hot mess to that in a couple of seconds. I literally did this as Mike was going through all the preliminary stuff this morning on the call, just kind of going through the financials and all that kind of stuff. So this was just 5 or 6 minutes on the quick of playing around with it. And again, I've only had these for a couple of weeks, so I don't have all the techniques down, but there's a bunch of videos out on YouTube. Some are done from AK themselves. Unfortunately, to try to get them into English, they use a kind of a speech. I guess they're talking in Castilian Spanish or whatever it is the thing's being presented in, and it's a robotic voice giving it to you in English, which gets a little hard to take at times. They need to teach those things how to talk right, or at least talk Southern. But it's some good information that's out there, and they've got great videos on using some of their washes and their pigments and things like that. I mean, guys, in the world of model railroading, we talk about doing weathering, but the military guys look at us and chuckle because we don't begin to do it to the level that these guys do, and especially from like the O scale guys and some of the stuff that you can do in O scale where you actually start getting some texture to it and things like that is really amazing. For mud and HO, it's a coat of paint. For mud and O scale, it better have some texture. And you start getting into the military guys in 1/35th scale, it has to look like mud or it just doesn't float. So these things they're using in smaller areas for highlights and stuff where we can use it for some, pretty advanced and pretty large broad brush kind of techniques. But again, there's some really, really good videos out there on YouTube for using their complete range from pencils to pigments to washes and all of that. And it's some eye-opening stuff that I think we could still incorporate into what we do.
Duane, a couple of questions here.
Mm-hmm.
Brooks is asking what the make and model of the paintbrushes on the left side of your workbench are. They look like a nice size.
Oh, this one here? I buy artist brushes. I don't bother with buying the stuff from that are geared toward modelers. I actually go to an art supply and pick these up. These are from Low Cornell, and this is like a 7,000 round. And one thing I like about these are kind of beat up, so I had them kind of set off to the side because I use them for weathering now. But it's a nice, good size, for you to hold on to. It's a short length, so you're not worried about another foot of brush sticking up out here. But they come in very, very small bristle sets. I mean, this is a 7650 spotter. Another spotter, those are all the same sizes, but they're very teeny tiny. I use these for figure painting. When I really need to get into a really small area, these are very, very fine brushes. And for figure paints, painting faces and things like that and getting into the details, these are very, very handy. I believe Hobby Lobby does not carry this. I think I bought a lot of these, oddly enough, at Michael's. So for a big box art store, they had some. But typically, I'm going over to a place like Azel Art Supply, or if you're online in other areas, Dick Blick would have very fine little brushes like this. And if you buy good artist brushes, that are designed for folks who are doing oils and oils and watercolors and things like that on canvas. Buy a good quality brush. You will spend more for it, but that brush will last you a lifetime and it will stay in good shape as long as you don't abuse it. If you tend to be a little rough on your brushes, then buy them at Hobby Lobby, buy them at Michael's, get whatever's on sale or on clearance and stockpile them. But a really, really good brush will last you for ages. Use it, clean it well, and they'll do pretty good for you.
Duane, how do you clean those when you get through using them?
Depends on the medium you're painting. If you're using an enamel or whatever, you're going to want to use some sort of thinner that's appropriate. So a lot of times when I was using the old flow quills and things like that, I never used Diasol. Diasol was a... Jesse James used a gun to get money like that, quite honestly. A little bitty can of Diasol would cost you $15 or something like that. I could buy a gallon of lacquer thinner at Home Depot for $5. And it does essentially the same thing. Modelers would always go, oh, God, you're going to craze your models. I had one model, and I understand I've been building models since I was 6. So I'm coming up on 45 years of experience doing this. I've had one plastic model that crazed on me, and it was just one of those things. And once it starts, it doesn't like to stop. It's just the reaction of the plastic with the thinner that you're using, and it's one of those things that it happens. It can happen, and they had a valid concern, using it. But I just never found it. It's something I don't soak in a lot of thinner. I'm not trying to make a wash out of an enamel paint, so it wasn't much of an issue. For watercolors and things like that, and I was looking on my desktop there before I switched cameras, I have a little tub of stuff that I bought at Hobby Lobby, and it's about that big around and about that thick. It almost looks like the size of something you would get for boot polish, and it's got a screw-off lid, and it's like Dr. Somebody's brush cleaner or something like that, and it comes in a bar, like a bar soap, and it comes in that little tub. I buy the tub. For anything acrylic, you just unscrew the top. I get the brush wet. I put a couple of drops of water down onto the cleaning medium, and I just scrub it back and forth on it. I get a buildup of it on the brush, and then I put that into the palm of my hand, and I scrub it back and forth. I work it out. Run a lot of water through it and things like that. Another good option if you're going to be doing a lot of painting, and I actually got this from back painting houses. If you're using a oil-based exterior paint to paint your house, flood your brush with thinner first. If you're using a latex paint for anything, flood the brush with water first. It will fill the well up. It will help the paint flow off the brush. It also makes cleanup easier. And I got that from a 80-year-old man who would climb up a ladder and paint a house faster than half of us could when we were in our teens. And he was right. It made clean up much faster because it would dampen that well. And what ends up happening if you don't, the paint will wick up into the well and it will help hold it in there. But since there's no thinner to keep the paint flowing back out again, it'll get up there and dry. And once you dry and you clog up the well of that thing, the clock is ticking on the end of your brush. It's going to start going downhill on you pretty fast. So I do a very thorough cleaning on all my brushes when I'm done. And then I put them into and I've brought this up to the division meetings before, over at Target.
Love that thing.
Yeah, I found this guy right here, and it's designed for makeup for after you clean your makeup brushes, for you to hang them upside down and let them dry out. So I keep this guy handy. I think at Target this was less than $10, something like that. And it comes, as you can see, in all kinds of different sizes. So you can actually run really big brushes in here, and this is rubber. I don't store my brushes in this because I don't want these to get a memory and be used to being out of shape. So I'll use this until the brush dries, and then I'll take it out, and then I store them bristles up in some old glasses that we've had around here. It's, when you first get married, you've got, ancient relative and relative revival. So I had all these hand-me-down glasses, and as we've replaced those over the years, several of them have ended up on my modeling bench for holding brushes, and I've got them sorted out by very tiny brushes to very fine point brushes to wide chisel brushes to big thick guys like this. But any of these things you can utilize, and I encourage everybody to pay attention to their clearance sections at Hobby Lobby, because they'll throw paint brushes out there for $1.50, $2 a piece, and you can buy some really nice expensive brushes, and you can buy them by the handful for next to nothing. I've got one drawer here in one of my toolboxes that literally the entire thing is full of nothing but brand new paint brushes to replace the dozens and dozens I have over here on my finishing station. As one of them wears out, I chuck it in the trash, and I grab a fresh one. So it's a good way to build up a supply cheap and give you some options and what to play around with.
Jason Parham. Jason, let's see if I can get you. There you go. Get you unmuted. You had a question for Duane?
Yeah, I guess what was the rough the brushes that you were showing? I don't think I've ever quite seen ones like that with that kind of handles on them.
Kind of like one like this.
Yeah, that's pretty.
I found these. These I'm pretty sure I bought over at Michael's. I know I did not get these at Hobby Lobby, but see if I can get it close enough, and hopefully it'll stay in focus enough.
It's not.
Yeah, that's what I was afraid of.
It's almost like a pencil handle or something.
It is. It's a little bigger than slightly bigger than a number 2, and it tapers down into a really fine point, and it really makes it comfortable to set it in your hand and get in and do a lot of fine detail. But the name of the company is LOEW Cornell, Cornell. They've made paintbrushes for years, but this particular one's called a round, It's an 18-0 number 7,000 round. And I get these rounds, and I get a lot of the spotters. The spotters are really, really fine. I mean, and I just dropped that in my deal of water and turned it over on, but fortunately it's all landed on my sandstone coaster, so it's not going to go anywhere. The other one I use a lot is the spotter, and it looks fairly identical. It's just the length of the bristles is much shorter. I mean, that's maybe about a 1/16 of an inch worth of bristles, where this one's probably more around an 1/8. So it depends. This one's really good if you're trying to do some small lines. So you've got a case where two barrels are sitting there next to each other, and you've got that round indentation. This one, with the longer bristles, does really good for getting a dark color back into that area and then blending that back out to set the shadow back in there. But when you're working on a face of a figure, this little spotter, you just can't beat it. It's teeny, it's tiny. I can do really fine detailed faces and stuff, even in HO. But we had a club here, Mark Lachey and I were involved with several others here in the area, and we had an SN3 layout, and I did a whole mess of figures for that one, including a group of cowboys that were over by Stock Pen, and was able to get some really, really highly detailed features on these guys, and did all of it with this.
Brooks Willing has a couple of comments. Brooks, can you share the information you?
Oh, okay. Sure. Yeah, I got a few of those LAYO Cornells. I haven't tried them yet, but I've got them from a website called discountartistbrush.com. They had them you can buy them individually for a few bucks a piece. Yep. And then I noticed that on one site, the LAYO Cornells are being discontinued. But I saw that King Art is bought the line or something, and it seems like they're making replacements for some of those.
Good. Yeah, these are really, really handy. I actually just stumbled across them one day in a sale bin and went, oh, good, because usually you get a fine brush like that. It's got a teeny tiny little round handle, and it's not like it's real hard to hang on to. But I'm finding the older I get, the more I like a little wider pencil or thing to hold on to. And so when I saw this one and saw it had a wider deal on it, I really liked it, because what I found on some of them, if they're really, really small, I end up adding these little pencil grips and things to them to widen them out. And with this one already being wider, it was perfect. So yeah, it's actually been a really nice set of brushes to have, and I wish I could get all my paintbrushes with the exact same handle. I find a lot of the artist brushes will have a handle on them that's 1 foot to 15 inches long, and sometimes I'm up here trying to do this, and the end of the paintbrush is smacking me in the face, and I'm like, okay. I've had some literally, I stuck them in the miter box and cut the handle off, so it was down to something about that long, so I could get in there and really get up close and personal with it. By the time you throw an optivisor on, a lot of times you're holding that figure right up here by your eyeball, and a big old long paintbrush just won't work. And that's another thing I like about these.
I was watching a video on using oils, and a guy named Mike Rinaldi's big into military modeling, and he recommended those that he's using the LAYO Cornells. Yeah. And I think he uses a number 2. So that's what I got, but he said that he likes them because they hold a very fine point.
Yes,
and very sharp.
So. Yeah, they hold it for a good long time too. These it won't close in tight or get in tight enough for you to really tell it, but at least I don't think it will. But the bristles on these are just frayed all over the place. But I've been using these are probably 10 or 12 years old. So they have definitely done their duty. But just because these things are all frayed out does not mean you chuck them in the trash, because if it's still got an active bristle on it, you can still use it for something. And even a lot of times I'll find that I can take them and do one of these and wet my finger and my thumb down and do this kind of motion on the brush and then twist the brush a little bit.
Pull it back together.
Yeah, and a lot of times I do this when I'm done cleaning it. I'll reshape the bristles and then hang it in that holder to dry. And what I find with a lot of these is, other than a few errant ones, it still will pull some shape back together again. But when I'm looking into weathering and I'm looking for fine detail in weathering, a lot of times these that are still frayed out, I don't mind it, because it might reach out and add a streak over here and add a streak over there as I'm putting something in, and then I blend it all back together again. So these are really good brushes, and like I say, I've been using them forever and love them to death.
Mark Lachey, you were mentioning something about when we were talking about the brush cleaning. Can you share that, please? Hello, Mark. I guess Mark is. I don't see Mark anymore. I know he's here because he's still on the call, but oh, Mark has gone. Mark has gone away. So I think he's still on the call. He's just stepped out away from the room. He said that you can get the brush cleaning soap from Hobby Lobby.
Yes, that's where I buy mine, is at Hobby Lobby. Michael's has, I believe Michael sells the product as well, but I buy mine over at Hobby Lobby because I've got one right around the corner from my house. So, but yeah, it's only a couple of bucks. It's on the same aisle with all the paint brushes. It's a kind of a tan color. And like I say, the minute I thought about it, if I'd have remembered, I'd have had it out here to be able to have it available to show you. I didn't think about it at the time. But I'll see if I can post a picture out to the news group or something like that. But it's a little tan colored plastic, tub of the stuff, or you can buy it like a bar soap. Either way, they've got them both. So it's a really good brush cleaner for working through
Lachey's back now, but he's down on the coast.
Oh, there he goes. Yeah, Brooks has got some he's showing on his screen right now. That's the stuff.
Okay. Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, yep. Corley, be careful. You're about to get run over. There's a train coming up behind you. Corley.
Hello.
I said.
One of the things that
there's a train coming up behind you. Be careful.
Okay. That's a Frisco train. It won't run over me.
That's right. It knows
One
better.
of the things I learned from Dave Revella in some of the classes I took back in the 2000s was after you clean your brushes to use some hair conditioner like you get in the hotels and things like that, and put that on your bristles, and then straight pull it out and feather it to a point and let that dry, and that breaks off whenever you get ready to use it. And it has really served me well. All my brushes still have a super fine point on them, and I attribute that to that technique.
Yeah, I'd forgotten to mention that. That is a good way to finish them off when you're done. That's an old trick that I'm not remembering where I heard that one the first time, but yeah, Dave does preach that one. And I tell you, if you ever want to follow somebody that knows what they're talking about when it comes to weathering, Dave would be a good one to do it. He weathers backwards to me. My mom does oils and pastels and paints big murals and stuff like that. And she's the one that kind of worked me into the work from dark to light. Do your darks in the background and then build your light on top of it. Dave works the other way around. And for the life of me, it doesn't make sense, but I will never argue that man's results. His work is amazing. And he's got a couple of DVDs out there I think they're available through Scotty Mason, that he's got one in particular, just weathering detail parts. And if you haven't seen it, do yourself a favor, go out and look for it. It's a really, really nice instructional on how to do it.
What's the guy's name again?
Dave Revella.
Okay.
And like I say, that DVD is available through Scotty Mason.
Hey, Duane.
Yes, sir.
As an alternative to that low Cornell brush, if that's no longer available, Princeton Art and Brush Company makes something similar. Here is my version.
Yeah.
What I picked up from Banta at some of the narrow gauge conventions, and you can get a variety of sizes down to that 18 or 20 spotter.
Yep.
One of the things that they taught me was, and of course you were doing this too, was after you use your brush cleaner, is to make sure to hang that thing up to dry.
Yep.
To clean that well out. But you've already talked about that. But
one of the big things is don't set your brush, like if it's an acrylic, don't just set it into a glass of water and leave it resting on its bristles. That'll kill a brush, because what you're doing is you're causing the bristles to fan out at the bottom, and it'll kill a brush. So you always want to take it, dip it in whatever you're working in, and then be able to hang it up to dry. And that's where that makeup brush cleaner stand comes in real handy.
Princeton Art and Brush Company, and I think you can probably get these at Azle or Dick Blick or someplace like that.
Yeah, good artist supply store. Hobby Lobby and Michaels serve a certain group of people, and it's nothing wrong with the materials you're going to get over there. They do have some good quality brushes, and they have them on sale a lot. It's not unusual for Hobby Lobby to have a 50% off on brushes, and you buy, Winsor Newtons and things like that, you'll get a good brush. I've got a ton of Winsor Newtons. My mom uses them.
40% off coupon too.
Not if it's on sale.
Oh, okay. If it's on, that's correct.
Yeah. So it's but
if it's not on sale, then you can.
Exactly. But do yourself a favor and go find you a true artist supply store. In the Dallas-Fort Worth area, we have Azel Art Supply. They have several locations here. Otherwise, you may be shopping online, or look in your phone book. God, I'm old. Look online and do a quick search on the internet and look for an art supply store in your area and go take a look at the supply of brushes they have. And most of the time, what you're going to find working in there are some kids. They're usually college students, but they're usually art majors. And a lot of times, what these guys will hire are people who know the materials and know the product. So don't be afraid if it's this little teeny bopper kid comes walking up and you're used to dealing with the grizzly old guy at the paint department at Home Depot kind of deal. Those are polar opposites. You want to get good paint at Home Depot, you want to talk to the old guy because he's a retired house painter. You want to talk to, these art supplies, go talk to the kid who's taking college classes, because he will tell you which ones are good on a budget and which ones it's a $12 brush, but you know what? It'll outlast all the other ones by a long shot. Spend the 12 and buy it. So it's good to get advice from those guys. They'll usually steer you in a really good direction. But don't be afraid to spend money on a good brush.
All right. Any other questions? Steve, hang on a second. Let me get down here to you and I'll unmute you. Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I do a lot of painting with acrylics. If you set a paintbrush aside and forget about it and let it dry, if you go to Hobby Lobby and get this Delco Art brush and stencil cleaner and hang the brush in it, and overnight you'll take all that paint out and your brush will be brand new.
Really?
Just want to pass that on.
Ooh, hang on a second. Let me grab something to write with.
I use the Masters for cleaning brushes, which is good, but if it's dry, that won't take it out.
Yeah, very true.
Can you give us that product again and the picture? Let us see the bottle again, Steve.
It's Delco Art. I got this at Hobby Lobby for 99 cents. And it saved a $2.56 brush.
Brush and stencil cleaner. Where do they keep that?
It's on one. You'll have to. It's one of the aisles. I don't remember which aisle it was on. It's not down there where the paints are at. It's up towards where where some of the railroad stuff is and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
All right.
They're by the acrylic paints.
That's a good tip. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, this stuff's good for when you finish painting. You clean a wet brush, but if it's dry, this won't do it.
Yep. Yeah. Once that thing's dry, usually it's just chucked it at that point.
But I just hang it in I hang it from a clothespin in a little container, so just enough to coat the bristles so it won't get crushed or anything.
Very cool. Great tip. Thank you.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's amazing how when we have these meetings that little pearls drop out, and everybody's got a little way that they do stuff. And back when I was doing mortgage training, I had a guy that would come to my class every single time that I was in Phoenix, and he'd sell the same class that I taught probably 8 times, and he paid $100 a time to come see me teach that class. And I kept asking. I asked him one day, I said, every time I come to this town, why do you come over here when you're seeing the same thing? He goes, because if I get one extra little pearl from that I didn't hear the first time you taught the class, and I can put those pearls together, it's well worth that $100 and me taking off the day to come do it, because it just makes all the difference in the world. So collect those pearls, man, from wherever you can get them. I've always remembered that.
Well, and to Mike's point, I usually when we're doing a face-to-face, I'll do a tips and tricks section at either division meeting, and it's passing along little things that I've picked up from, like Steve just mentioned, to the point where I write for the HON3 annual every year, and my editor there also does their books, and he's actually approached me about doing a tips and tricks book. So it's little things like this that you get at these meetings that, as Mike said, you store them away, you add them to your toolkit, and they really pay off over time. And it's amazing, if you raise your hand at one of these meetings and say, how do you do, and fill in the blank. If there's 43 guys at the meeting, and I think that's what our attendance was a little bit earlier.
We got up to 45.
Yeah. So, you ask that meeting in a room full of 45 guys, there's a good opportunity that you're probably going to get about 24 or more different suggestions on how to go about doing it. all of them viable, all of them will get you good results. It just depends on which one tends to work for you the best. These meetings are a wonderful place to pick up this kind of stuff and share the things you've picked up.
And for those of you who are not from the D1 area and want to start getting our information and passed along to you and start logging in and knowing when we're having meetings and stuff like that, if you'll just drop me an email, then I'll be happy to add, and I'll get Mr. Corley to add you to our mail distribution list so that you'll find out when our meetings are, what we're doing, all that kind of stuff, and stay in contact. Because based off what I'm seeing here, I think this is going to be a good format for us to start broadcasting our meetings going forward, especially when we start getting that switcher that Brooks is going to help us get, and we start doing that broadcast across the live on YouTube. We can broadcast YouTube and Facebook at the same time, and I think that's going to be a huge thing to be able to share content. Gordy had to bug out a while ago, but he said, man, this is exactly what we're looking for. So,
hey, Mike, one last tip. I just thought about this.
Okay.
When you're painting your little detail parts, a lot of us have gone to acrylic paints because that's the way the industry's going. If you're going to use these watercolored pencils and turn them into washes and use water, you need to seal these with a clear coat first. Because otherwise, when you start getting those pencils wet and you start putting water on it, it will reactivate the paint and cause the paint to run. And I just did it on this and had to cover it back up again. Didn't think about it, didn't realize this one hadn't been sealed yet. So if you're going to use these things and going to use them in a wet format, seal your parts and pieces first.
Just a coat of dull coat, rattle can dull coat.
And if you're going to use dull coat, do yourself a favor and go over to Hobbytown USA, because I don't think Hobby Lobby carries it, and get the Tamiya, however you want to pronounce it, and get their version of dull coat. It's a lot finer. They've got a couple of different grades of it, as Mr. Crumpton found, and get theirs. I think McCarthy's got a question or wants to say something there. Mike, you want to unmute him?
Hang on a second. Let me get over there to Pat. There you are. And Pat, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Quick question, Duane. Did you have you had any in using the pencils? Have you had any experience with that stuff reacting with a clear coat on top of that?
Not so far. Not so far. I was working on this guy here earlier, and that's got a coat of flat on it, and it hasn't seemed to react to it at all. Now that paint's been dry for decades. This thing was painted, I don't know when, probably back in the 90s at some point. So it's got 15, 20 years worth of cure time on it. But you want to make sure that coat is good and solid,
But the pencil coat, the weather coat that you put on it, have you had any?
Oh, cleared over that? No, I have not tried that yet. Like I say, I've just had these for a couple of weeks and not had a chance to really get busy playing with them. Pete's clinic, when he was talking about them, he typically doesn't seal over his weathering coat just because he's not handling his freight equipment that much, he said. So I have not tried sealing them yet, but I can give that a rip and give you guys some feedback on what I find.
Yeah, I hadn't either. I hadn't even gotten to the point where I'm ready to finish coat something like that.
Yeah,
I was just wondering if you had.
Yeah, no, I've been playing around on a couple of castings that were just laying around on my bench, just trying to learn how to do it and kind of follow along with some of the videos on YouTube. And so I haven't got to a point where I try to seal any of them yet. However, I will say that once they get on there and you feather them around or whatever, they don't move around anymore. If you do get one that you don't like the results of it, the little white erasers that you get, if you go over if you're in Hobby Lobby, over in this section where they have all the compasses and the architecture kind of tools, they'll have a white eraser there. You can get the little ones that click in and out on a pencil kind of thing. Those types of erasers will take it right off the part. Now, if you get a lot of details, it's not going to get down into it, but if you're working on a flat surface like siding of a building or something like that, you can get it in there and you can erase it and it'll come right off. So there are some options there that you can, pull some of it back if you want to. But I found these artist sponges, and you can get these in different shapes and sizes too. You can get in there on those, and while it's still just a little bit damp, and get in there and kind of scrub on it, and it will even feather it out even further and really soften the edges down really nice. nice, and almost to a point of polishing it to some degree, and gives it a little different sheen, a little different effect. But I found that taking it, and now that this part is dry, and doing that, and none of it comes off. So it seems to be pretty stable as far as staying on the model. So depending on what you're doing, you may not need to clear coat it. Freight equipment, I probably would, just because you're inevitably going to derail it, and you have to pick the thing up and put it back on the rails and stuff like that, and just to keep anything from coming off on your hands. But like I say, I just scrubbed around on that and nothing came off. So, but I'll play around with clear coating one, and I'll get back to everybody and let you know how it works.
Any other questions? Any other comments? Well, guys, Mike, yeah, hang on a second. Here you go, Mike. What you got?
I didn't have a question for Duane, but Duane, that was very good presentation. I just had a comment I wanted to make. And I feel a little silly for not having looked at the comparison of model railroad curves versus prototype. The question, I think Jason brought it up, Parham. And then somebody else mentioned that a 30-inch radius curve is a 26-degree curve. That is correct. It's 26.3 degrees to be exact. And so I just wanted to give you a feel for how crazy our model railroad curves are. If you wanted to have a 3-degree curve, which in mainline railroading is not considered real sharp, but it's, you want to keep it to the 1 and 2 degree if you can. But a 3-degree curve is a 263.4 inch radius. I mean, nobody's going to do that unless you're doing a module. The maximum curve we allowed on Burlington Northern for industrial tracks only was 12.5 degrees. That's a sharp curve, and that's a 63.2 inch radius. So you can clearly see that our curves are sharp.
Yep. Well, and part of that too is you think about the compression of scale. I mean, we're taking something down to a much smaller size. It also allows us that selective compression. So yeah, it's all about space.
All right. Anybody else? Well, guys, it's come up here. I'm going to unmute everybody in the group. We've had I thought a great meeting here.
All right. Bye-bye.
We've got it's 12:13, and I just want to tell everybody I appreciate you joining in. Everybody, you had a great day. I hope you learned a lot of things. We're going to do this again, and hope everybody enjoyed it. Be safe, be well, and we will talk to you again soon.